This is another Inside Sales Geek academic to practice production. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zeroing in on a really compelling academic study. It unpacks something pretty fundamental to successful sales.
Right. We're talking about that powerful connection between empathy, a salesperson's own emotions, and, well, how they actually perform, especially in B2B.
Exactly. You've sent over some excellent material, and our goal, as always, is to distill the core insights for you.
Yeah, finding those aha moments, giving you that shortcut to understanding what really drives results in sales conversations.
Yeah.
Without all the heavy academic jargon.
So the big question we're tackling today, and this comes straight from the research, is how does a salesperson's ability to genuinely empathize with a buyer and their own emotional state, whether they're feeling positive or negative, how does that directly influence how well they listen?
Okay.
How adaptable they are, and ultimately how successful they actually are in their sales role.
Yeah, the performance piece.
And this study, it looked specifically at B2B salespeople in manufacturing, I believe. So it's grounded in, well, the real world.
It is. And, one of the first things the study points out is quite interesting. While everyone sort of agrees empathy is crucial.
Right. Seems obvious.
It does. But there hasn't actually been a ton of deep research on it, specifically in B2B sales. Someone named Bogazzi noted years ago that empathy is this key positive social emotion that really needed more research.
So this study is kind of filling that gap.
Exactly. It really digs into that maybe underexplored area.
Okay, so let's make sure we're on the same page. What do we actually mean by empathy in a sales chat?
Well, the researchers define it pretty clearly. They say it's a salesperson's demonstration of interest and concern for the welfare of the customer.
Interest and concern. So it's more than just like nodding along.
Oh, absolutely. It's about genuinely trying to understand and maybe even share the buyer's feelings and their perspective. It's definitely deeper than just surface agreement.
And the study links this to something called appraisal theory. How does that work?
Yeah, basically, appraisal theory suggests empathy comes about when a salesperson starts to evaluate or appraise the buyer's situation the same way the buyer does, seeing it through their eyes.
Okay.
But, and this is important, this isn't just guesswork. It relies heavily on the salesperson actively gathering good information, quality and quantity.
Right. You can't really see it from their perspective if you don't know what their perspective is.
Precisely. The more they understand the buyer's world, the more accurate and effective their empathy can be. So a key insight here, empathetic salespeople really work to see things like the buyer does, and that takes active info gathering.
That makes a lot of sense. You need the input to have the output.
Yeah.
So how does this empathy then, show up in actual sales behaviors?
Right.
The study mentioned two key ones.
It did. The first critical behavior is listening. And what's fascinating is the direct link they found between empathy and, well, the salesperson's desire to listen more and talk less.
Okay, so empathy makes you want to listen better.
It seems like it. And they point to other research, Pryor and colleagues, who found buyers actually see good listening as empathy. If you're hearing them out, they feel you're being empathetic.
So listening is almost like the physical manifestation of empathy in that conversation.
You could say that. And this study gets quite specific about what good listening involves. It breaks it down into 3 dimensions, drawing from Ramsey and Sohi. First is sensing, really being alert to all the cues, verbal and nonverbal.
Paying attention.
Right. Then there's processing, accurately understanding and interpreting the message behind those cues, not just hearing the words.
Getting the meaning.
Exactly. And finally, responding, giving relevant, timely answers that actually show you've processed what they said.
And empathy boosts all 3.
That's the argument. If you genuinely care about the buyer's situation, you'll naturally pay closer attention, sensing, you'll work harder to understand processing, and your answers will be more relevant and helpful, responding. So yeah, empathetic salespeople are just better listeners across the board. Buyers feel heard.
Okay, got it. Empathy drives listening. It's not passive, it's strategic listening. What was the second key behavior?
Adaptive selling.
Adaptive selling, tailoring the pitch.
Yeah, essentially. It's the salesperson's ability to adjust their sales approach based on the specific buyer and the context of that particular interaction.
Yeah.
Empathy helps here because it lets salespeople kind of anticipate how a buyer might react.
So you can sort of predict their response and tweak your approach before you put your foot in it.
Exactly. You can read the room better, adjust your style, all based on that deeper understanding you've gained through empathy.
And this leads to better relationships.
It does. stronger interpersonal connections, which research has shown, and it can even encourage the buyer to respond more positively, sort of like a reciprocal thing. Empathetic salespeople just get a better feel for what buyers need and can address those needs more sensitively. Wow. They achieve a better buyer fit.
Okay, so empathy fuels better listening and more adaptive selling. Now, the crucial link. How do these skills actually boost performance? The results.
Right, this is where it gets really interesting. The study looks at performance in two ways: in-role and extra-role.
In-role and extra-role. Okay, what's the difference?
In-role is basically your core job responsibilities: hitting targets, managing accounts, giving presentations, the expected stuff.
Got it.
Extra-role performance is more about those discretionary actions, things you do that aren't strictly required that help the team or the company overall go on the extra mile.
Okay, so listening helps with both.
That's what the research suggests. Good listening isn't just about having a nice chat. It helps you gather the info you need to do your main job. Well, that's the in-role part.
Right.
But it also builds stronger relationships and deeper understanding, which can lead to those extra contributions, helping colleagues, suggesting improvements, things like that. That benefits the whole organization.
And adaptive selling. Does that also hit both types of performance?
The study mainly links adaptive selling directly to improved performance in general, which usually implies those core in-role results. Tailoring your approach logically leads to better outcomes, like closing deals.
Makes sense.
And there's another potential benefit mentioned: higher job satisfaction for the salesperson. Constantly adapting and engaging deeply can actually make the work more fulfilling.
Interesting. Okay, now let's add the salesperson's own feelings into the mix. The affect part. How do positive or negative emotions change things?
This is where the broaden and build theory enters the picture. Essentially, the study found that positive affect, feeling happy, enthusiastic, optimistic, acts like an amplifier.
An amplifier for empathy.
Exactly. When you're feeling positive, your thinking tends to broaden, you see more possibilities, you build resources. That positive state acts like fuel for your empathy, making it even more effective at driving listening and adaptive selling.
Okay, so empathy is good. Positive feelings make that empathy work even harder.
Precisely. The study even shows this visually in its figures. The link between empathy and listening. It's significantly stronger when the salesperson is also feeling positive. Same for adaptive selling. So yes, positive emotions multiply the impact. Empathy plus positive emotions is greater than just process alone.
Wow. So a happy, empathetic salesperson is really hitting on all cylinders. What about the flip side? Negative affect, stress, frustration. We all have bad days.
Yeah, and this is where the findings were a bit more nuanced, maybe even surprising. Logically, you'd think negative feelings would hinder empathy's effectiveness.
Right, make it harder to connect.
But the study found that negative affect didn't significantly weaken the positive link between empathy and those key behaviors: listening and adapting.
Really? That is surprising. Why would that be?
Well, they offer a couple of ideas. One is the undoing hypothesis. The idea here is that positive emotions, maybe like the empathy itself, can sometimes counteract or buffer the effects of negative ones.
So the empathy is resilient.
Potentially, yes. Another thought is just the nature of sales. It is stressful. Salespeople might develop coping mechanisms or a certain resilience, allowing them to still deploy empathy effectively, even when they're feeling down or stressed.
Okay, but it didn't help, right? Negative emotions aren't suddenly a good thing.
Oh, absolutely not. The key point is they didn't negate the positive impact of empathy in this study's findings, but they certainly didn't enhance it like positive emotions did. So negative emotions don't kill empathy's link to behavior, but they definitely don't help either.
Okay, that's a really important clarification. So putting this all together, what are the big takeaways for, say, a sales leader listening to this? What can they actually do tomorrow?
Right, the practical application. Based on this, I see three key things. First, prioritize empathy training. Seriously.
Make it core, not just a soft skill add-on.
Exactly. Treat it as a fundamental relationship tool that directly hits performance. Build exercises into your training. Focus on developing what you might call empathic selling.
Okay, train for empathy. What's number 2?
Recognize and reward it. Shift the focus, or at least broaden it, beyond just the numbers. Actively look for and reward salespeople who demonstrate empathy, who build those strong connections. Make it clear through manager actions and maybe even incentives that this is valued in your culture. It's not just about the rational process.
So change how success is maybe perceived and celebrated a bit. Okay. And the third takeaway?
Build social support systems. Sales is tough. negative affect happens.
For sure.
So things like mentorship programs, strong team cohesion, peer support systems that help salespeople navigate those rough patches, manage the negative feelings, and get back to a more positive state, help them refuel.
Right. Support them through the inevitable downs. So train empathy, reward empathy, and support the team emotionally. Those seem very actionable.
I think so. At the end of the day, this deep dive really highlights that empathy isn't just nice, it's a powerful engine. It drives effective listening, it drives adaptive selling, and those things drive better performance.
And positive feelings supercharge it.
Right. Positive affect acts like an accelerant, while empathy itself shows some toughness even when things are stressful.
It really hammers home that sales is fundamentally human, isn't it? Not just a transaction.
Deeply human.
So for you, our listener, here's something to chew on. What's the real potential ROI on investing seriously in the emotional intelligence, the empathy of your sales team? If empathy and positive vibes are so clearly linked to hitting targets and even helping the wider company, well, what potential are you leaving on the table by not actively fostering these skills?
Yeah, what untapped potential is there?
And maybe, just maybe, what if our sales metrics started to evolve? What if they began to include things like customer connection or perceived empathy? Just some food for thought.